As we know, Alzheimer's is a progressive disease that causes memory loss. This is something that millions of families face. And although there's no cure yet, there are so many risk factors that we can modify.
Welcome to the Ultra Healthy Now podcast, where your journey to feeling younger, sexier, and more energized begins. Dr. Nicole Srednicki, who specializes in high-performance health, will dive into practical, actionable tips and strategies that can transform your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Join us as we uncover the secrets to living a healthier, happier life, mind, body, and spirit. Because true health, beauty, and happiness start on the inside.
Entrepreneurs, we know you're always on the go, building your empires, but amidst all this hustle, have you actually considered how your brain health might impact your long-term success? Welcome to Ultra Healthy Now podcast on the Rich Dad Media Network. I'm your host, Alexandra, with, of course, Dr. Nicole Srednicki. And today we're diving into an episode about Alzheimer's disease and memory loss. Dr. Srednicki is a leading expert in cognitive health and will give us actionable strategies to reduce the risk and improve our cognitive function. We're going to be discussing how diet, exercise, lifestyle choices can make a significant impact on our brain health. And don't forget to stick around until the very end, because we're going to be talking about some pressing questions about Alzheimer's. And, this topic actually hits close to home. I have a history in my family of Alzheimer's. And, although I'm young and I think about it and I'm proactive about it, because I've seen the ugly reality of it, I think it's becoming also more common. Imagine being just 69 like Bruce Willis and facing this kind of diagnosis, or even Jenna Rollins. She was the actress in Notebook and is now diagnosed with the same disease as her character. So all these things are, very worrying. I don't think anyone wants to hear those words. And today we're going to be talking about how this affects millions of people, how we can actually reduce the risks. And so, Dr. Nicole Srednicki, thank you so much for shedding light on such important topics like these. And to start off the show, is there a way to detect Alzheimer's early, even before symptoms start to occur?
Yeah, so I want to start off by saying I want this to be like a motivational show. I don't want it to be depressing, because there are so many risk factors out there, but we can modify them. So yes, there is testing that can be done, and we can kind of talk more about that. I think it's very important to understand what the testing looks like, and also the kind of ethical ramifications around that. So we can kind of get into that a little bit more. But as Alexandra said, today we're going to focus on brain health, focusing on cognitive function. And as we know, Alzheimer's is a progressive disease that causes memory loss. So we're going to touch a lot on that memory loss. This is something that millions of families face. And although there's no cure yet, there are so many risk factors that we can modify, as we already said. So today, I want to share a personal story from a patient that touches on something that many of us think about as we age, and exactly that, memory loss. And this can start young, this can start old. And, as Alexandra pointed out with Bruce Willis, we are seeing the development of dementia, Alzheimer's, with one of the predominant symptoms being memory loss at younger and younger ages. And this is so scary. So, if you're young, you may want to stay tuned in, because this is also information that you can pass along to, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, any loved ones. And two, you can implement some of this stuff in your life now. Remember that if we start implementing positive lifestyle habits before you develop symptoms or progression towards an illness, this is so much better than waiting till you already have a symptom or a disease. So, Alex, you already mentioned you have a family history of Alzheimer's. So I'm sure, just thinking about this is anxiety provoking, but isn't it kind of empowering to know that if you start changing your lifestyle right now, you can dramatically reduce the risks of developing it.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, that is such it's you shed positivity on something that can be, in a way sad. And we can take action. There are solutions. And yeah, everything that I've actually loved about going to you for my health is knowing that we can take care of ourselves, we can prevent things that scare us. And not only that, if you're young, it's still kind of scary to, I don't know, go into a room and then forget what you were gonna get, or forget someone's name. Like these are all things that if we're entrepreneurs, if we're investors, we need to be sharp. And other people need to see that too, because that's how you sell yourself. And so, making sure that you're thinking optimally today, but also taking care of what might scare you in the long term, right?
Exactly. And I'll bring up the Bruce Willis example again. I mean, he's worked hard his whole life and now he has gotten diagnosed with this at such a young age. And so for people that, want to just be like, I'm young, I don't need to worry about that now. No, you should start doing something, being aware and doing something so that you don't have to run those risks when you get older. After all this hard work you put in as being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So when Liza, one of my patients, when she first walked in, she said, it's my mission to fight this head on, even though Alzheimer's runs in my family. So for those of you who don't know really what Alzheimer's is, it's a progressive brain disorder that gradually destroys your memory, thinking skills, and eventually your ability to even carry out simple tasks. I mean, as scary as I have a friend that they live in a condo and she'll send her husband to go take the garbage out to, they have to go to that door in the hallway. And sometimes he gets lost just going back to their own residence.
It's yeah. And the other day in my community, there was like a poster of someone's grandmother that's been lost because it happens like that, right? Like you walk outside your door to drop off the mail or take out the trash, and then suddenly you don't know where you were going or who your own family relatives are. So it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia in older adults. So I like to, when I like to give the analogy of Alzheimer's is like the actual process of it. Think of it like a busy office where you have all this paperwork building up on desks and in file cabinets. And this paperwork is like the plaques in our brain you actually get these abnormal plaques that start building on your brain. And, like in the office, this clutter is going to start to make communication increasingly difficult for the employees, and it's going to cause difficulties in doing their jobs. And gradually it's going to lead to a decline in the office productivity. Just like when we have these plaque buildups, that starts to disrupt our cell communication, our functions, and then leading to memory loss. So when Liza came in, so she's 70 years old, she's overweight and dealing with the reality that Alzheimer's runs in her family. Her mother and her grandmother both had the disease, and it was early onset. And she knows the challenges her family faced caring for them. So when Liza came to Ultra Healthy Human, she was determined to change her future. She told me that while she can't change her genetics, she can change her lifestyle and her health. So I love that she had like such a positive attitude about it. And we'll get into more of that, attitude, internal dialogue later on. But we had an honest conversation about her weight, her lifestyle, and these health concerns. And together, we created a plan aimed at reducing the risks of developing Alzheimer's. So we created a process of achieving 4 goals through a 3-step program. It was brain health, reducing inflammation, improving our metabolic function, and setting her up for long-term success. So she knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she was committed. So the 3-step program consisted of first labs. Specifically, we looked at inflammation markers. I'm always talking about inflammation, and how dangerous it can be for our body. We looked at markers of abnormal metabolism and some cardiovascular markers, just as kind of basics, not to go into too much detail. The second step was lifestyle modifications, and the third step was introducing new therapies. So because lifestyle heavily impacts this, let's look at the science behind it. So what are the factors that can help reduce the risk of Alzheimer's? So first, looking at brain health from all different angles, some of the lifestyle changes. First, diet. Research shows that certain diets can help reduce the risks of Alzheimer's. And so Liza's plan focused on low carb, low sugar, and anti-inflammatory diet that was high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is great for brain health. She also incorporated foods that were rich in antioxidants like berries and leafy greens, which might help to fight oxidative stress and inflammation. Both are linked to cognitive decline. So, guess what we started first? The detox. Because as you know, focusing with the detox, we focus on reducing inflammation, oxidative stress, blood sugars, and ultimately reducing weight and increasing antioxidant levels. So, if you're wondering what oxidative stress is, it's kind of like rust forming on your car. Just as exposure to air and moisture can cause rust buildup and damage the metal in your car, oxidative stress occurs when there's an imbalance between free radicals, which are like the bad guys, and antioxidants. And this stresses your whole system. So, similar to how rust weakens and degrades metal, antioxidants, like the good guys in your body, work like a protective paint or like a rust proof coating. However, when there aren't enough antioxidants or those good guys to counteract the damaging effect of the free radicals, the bad guys, it leads to oxidative stress. Much like how insufficient rust protection can lead to a rusted, weakened car structure. So, yep, go ahead.
No, go on. I'm curious, right? Because obviously, one can feel the effects of like the detox when you're currently doing it, when you're off it. I used to love sugar and crave it all the time. And it was actually something that like frightened me because I'm like, okay, this history of Alzheimer's, maybe I shouldn't be consuming as much sugar, right? Out of the lifestyle changes in your diet, what would you recommend if you were to pick one? Like, which one's the most important one to focus on? Because when you're dealing with certain addictions like the carbs and the sugar, which one would you say, can cause more of that inflammation or trigger more memory loss?
So I would say sugar. When we look at this, like what you're asking is like, is it sugar that we focus on? Is it, the fat content? Is it processing? So sugar is very well known to cause, like it increases actually. So if you have diabetes, right? So that's like abnormal sugar metabolism. This is going to increase your risks of developing Alzheimer's by 50 to 100%.
Wow.
So that just shows you like why it's so important to improve insulin within your body, how your body uses it, lowering sugar intake. And when we say lowering sugar intake, this also includes carbs. So I think we could have the entire podcast on the difference, between good and bad, sugars, carbs. And then we pull foods that are processed versus ultra processed, which are like horrible. Processed foods are foods that are basically altered from their natural state. But then when we look at ultra processed foods, this goes beyond just like, simple manipulation. Now they're adding ingredients like sugar enhancers, ingredients to improve like textures, colors, tastes, or even to preserve it longer. So things like soda, instant noodles, chips, some bread, some cereals. Yeah. So that, the ultra processed foods can really, I think I saw a study that if your diet consists of 400 calories daily of processed food, this is going to increase your risks of developing memory loss by 20%. So with Liza, because we already knew she had a little bit of a weight issue, we need to work on, reducing her weight, but also within her diet, specifically looking at, yes, we need to get sugar levels down. And within this sugar, that means like carbs that are metabolized into sugar. And even, being aware of high sugar fruits. I see this a lot where patients are really trying to eat healthy, and they're like, I eat bananas and melon and, all the good, I'm eating like healthy sugars, but some of those sugars are like, they're also bad for you because your body just can't tolerate that amount of sugar. Banana has a lot of sugar in it compared to maybe having like a cup of raspberries. So, being aware of even, kind of like the good and bad sugars and really kind of breaking it down. And this is something that I sometimes help my patients with. Sometimes we'll just have a visit to literally, I'll have them do a food journal and then we'll like break down those things. Cause, a lot of people have their favorite foods, right? And so when I can understand really what their diet looks like, then we can really break it down and also make it feasible for them so that they still have that balance of quality of life, but also then feeling confident in their healthy food decisions.
And apart from like the diet aspect of it, right? Are there exercises or any other lifestyle changes that can improve cognitive health?
Definitely. So for Liza, we worked on an exercise plan. And we know that exercise isn't just good for the body, it's very good for the brain. And so for her, before she came to see me, she wasn't exercising very much or she wasn't getting her heart rate up. That's always key with exercise. There are studies that show that, walking 8,900 steps a day can reduce your risks of memory loss by 50%. But I always push my patients, you need to be checking your heart rate. Like just taking steps is not actual physical exercise. So we got her on a plan where she was exercising over the course of the week, 150 minutes of moderate exercise. And then for like younger individuals that can handle more vigorous exercise, their goal would be like 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. And this would be spread out kind of throughout the week at a minimum. So like Liza, she loves doing Zumba and so we started working in, instead of her just doing daily walks, now working in different types of exercises, doing some strength training, so that your body is constantly learning new exercises, working different muscles so they can build up. They don't want to build up too much of the same muscle memory.
Yeah. And quick question on that too, Nicole, because I know that there's like opposing views on, getting your heart rate up during a workout and whether it shouldn't, you shouldn't be stressing out your body because it can also trigger like, spike in your cortisol. Okay. So at least personally for me, I incorporate a mix of the strength training for my heart rate to, go up, but then also Pilates or like bar, which is a little bit less, vigorous on my body. Or even when we used to do spin, right? Your heart rate goes crazy. So, is there a con to also getting your heart rate up and like the cortisol levels, maybe stressing out your body too much when you're preventing the memory loss?
So that's also a good point. It's always finding that right balance for you. So, when we talk about getting your heart rate up, we definitely, there's a way you can calculate what your goal heart rate should be for like maximum cardiac capacity. And we know that if we have really good like cardiac health, again, that's going to like improve blood flow to our brain. That's going to help to reduce risks again. There can be like excessive, overall, I'm obviously not like I'm not a personal trainer. So I know that sometimes, an exercise physiologist, some of them probably know more than me on this topic, but we want to make sure that we are getting heart rate up. And like I said, calculate what's like a safe range for you. And then also like intervals, right? You don't want to just have your heart rate constantly up. If you're doing intervals, that's also something that I recommend. And then also, like you say about having cortisol constantly up, make sure you are protecting your adrenals. This is why, one of the supplements that I recommend to all my patients.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite.
Well, two, either ultra rejuvenate or stress modulator, because these also help to kind of give you just that balanced cortisol release so that you're not like spiking and crashing. And as I've mentioned in the past, like that's a type of stress on your body. If you are constantly physically stressing your body, there's all different types of stress. We all kind of deal with stress. So balancing that cortisol is super important.
And now that we're also talking about cortisol that we mentioned, because obviously I'm taking some of the vitamins you recommended to me, are there any vitamin deficiencies people should look out for when preventing this?
Yeah, well, so as I always mention, like you should understand what's going on in your body. So, getting blood work done to understand, looking at those metabolic markers, looking at inflammatory markers, looking at some of the cardiac numbers, understanding what's going on in your body, your blood pressure, all of these things can all impact this.
Okay.
In looking at inflammation in your body. So there was a study that looked specifically at CRP levels. So that's an inflammatory marker, oftentimes looking at inflammation kind of around your heart muscle. And this study saw that with consistently increased CRP levels, this increased risks of developing Alzheimer's by 50 to 70%.
Wow.
So so in kind of, I'm always talking about inflammation, because that's the foundation of not only Alzheimer's, but so many other diseases. We always want to keep that inflammation in check. And we get inflammation in our body from everything from our environment to our diet to stress. And so a supplement that I have also formulated what is called Ultra Vitality, and it really focuses on reducing inflammation levels within your body, because sometimes it's like, I don't like to always say there's like a supplement answer for everything, but we just live in a toxic environment. And a stressful environment. So we need to be doing things kind of just on top of the norm. And so, within this formulation that I've made, there's things like turmeric, boswellia, nattokinase, berberine, all different like super potent botanicals that studies have shown can help reduce these inflammatory markers.
Wow. And something that just came to mind right now is that, a lot of people are like, oh, they get upset when they're like, Robert, I have $10,000. What do I do with this? Where do I invest it? Right. And Robert's like, even if I tell you, like, you're going to lose it all because you don't have the financial education. Right. And so one thing that, that you just said, there's not a vitamin solution for everything, but something that I love about what you do and that's so unique, especially with such a sensitive topic like this, where I'm like, I almost wish I would have had these resources back then for my own grandfather, is that you educate the person into what labels they should be looking out for. What, like right now I just had a drink, and I know which one of these ingredients are actually bad for me and why I shouldn't be consuming them so often. And I'm aware of my surroundings, of what's actually putting toxins into my body, what I need to do to eliminate it. And that, yes, there are vitamins, but that it's not going to be like the cure end all be all. And you educate about your heart rate, what you should be doing to burn those calories, what exercises. So, just something for our audience too. Make sure you're getting educated, and not that you're not just depending on like some pill. Like, make sure your doctor is actually also guiding you as to, your education. And I don't know, that was just something that came to light for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I always like to emphasize as well. That's like a really good point, like understanding. I've had patients come to me in the past, and again, it's sad when they'll come to me with like a laundry list. They're like, I'm taking all these supplements, I'm trying to stay young, and they have no clue, like what they're doing in their body, what are their actual levels, are they working, are they good quality supplements? So I think that is like really important. And then so that you're also not taking unnecessary stuff. Like none of us want to take a million pills. And so, getting on like a really customized plan so that you know what's right for you and how you want to meet your goals. Getting on one of those customized plans is very smart.
Yes, I agree. And Nicole, so we talked about diet, we talked about exercise. Is there anything else we can be doing? Like, I know some people recommend, playing memory games, reading a book. Like, what other lifestyle changes can we implement?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on one other part of diet that I think you'll be excited about, and that's coffee. So studies show that 1 cup daily has a lot of health benefits like enhanced alertness, attention. It has neuroprotective properties because there's some, like as long as you're getting a good clean brand, compounds in the coffee may help to prevent memory loss. It can boost your neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and lower your risk of depression. And
wow, I love coffee even more now.
yeah. So, and just know So depression is associated with increased risks of memory loss because, when you start down that path of kind of like a negative mindset and really just feeling down, and if you just continue down that rabbit hole, your body starts to create new neural pathways. So, if you're experiencing subtle signs of, even like a down mood, address it. You might need to get help. Sometimes there's like surveys I'll have my patients do to recognize, because it's also something that you don't want to admit, like, oh, I'm depressed. Like, as an entrepreneur, it's going to I feel like a loser saying that, but it's not. I mean, we all go through these shifts, especially for women, PMS, hormone changes can definitely affect this. I've heard of patients in the past, like women being put on antidepressant medications when all they need is to balance their hormones. Not to end up on the wrong path here, but
That's a different episode.
that's later on. Although when we're going to talk about more of some of the actual therapies to help reduce the risks of memory loss or Alzheimer's. So we'll get back to that. But also, then on the contrary, talking about coffee, if you're drinking excessive amounts, so if you're drinking more than 3 cups per day, this will actually increase your risks of memory loss. So in moderation is awesome. When I was reading about these statistics, it made me think of my grandma, and she loved coffee. And I would always even though when she got really old, she kind of had an elevated heart rate, and people are like, oh, she shouldn't have coffee. Well, coffee made her happy. It fed her soul. It made her more alert. It did help with her cognition. And so I always encouraged it.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I actually thought you were going to say that, coffee is a big no-no when it comes to this. And so that's a relief, something coffee attributes to. And obviously, yes, of course, if you're having more than 3 cups, try and figure out why, try and wean off of that, because it does seem like a lot of caffeine for your heart and everything. So anything in excess is always bad. But like you said, I'm there's also, you see everything in a very wholesome way. And it's like, if your grandma loved coffee, that's also something that cheers you up, that prevents depression, that makes her heart and soul happy. And, as long as you're living a long and healthy life.
Exactly. And it helps with, like we said, endorphins. Like, one of my favorite things to do with you whenever you're in Miami, we have our coffee dates, and
always our coffee and cycle classes. So those are things that bring happiness to the heart.
So some other I thought this was kind of interesting. With the hype of semaglutide, the weight loss medication, there has been some studies suggesting that semaglutide is showing some potential effects on brain health and Alzheimer's. But I think that's mostly due because we're regulating blood sugars, we're getting weight, excess weight off. So there's additional research about possible growth of neurons and enhancing survival of existing brain cells, which is really cool. So this is potentially some really great information about this medication. However, this is information that's still emerging, so it's considered experimental. And, as I always say, this is a new drug. So, we don't know long-term outcomes, good and bad. So, always weigh the risks versus benefits before jumping on the bandwagon with something new. A lot of the other information that we're sharing, has there's been many, many studies. It's been around for a long time. So it's definitely the plan I'm following.
And Nicole, what are some other, misconceptions that you'd like to clear up about Alzheimer's or memory loss?
Well, I mean, some people are like, oh, Alzheimer's it runs in my family. So, I'm going to get it. So I'm just going to live my life. And that's absolutely not correct. You can definitely do things to, increase your risks or decrease your risk. And one other thing that I want to bring up that I think is also super important in the prevention is sleep. Poor sleep is closely related to memory loss. So, having a good sleep hygiene is essential. We're actually going to do a whole podcast on sleep because it's so important. It affects every system in our body. Of course, it affects our mood and memory. But, one tip that I have is ask yourself this question. Do you have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or do you not feel rested in the morning? So, if you are having issues with any of these, you should seek medical attention so that you can figure out why. Is it stress? Is it sleep apnea? Is it anxiety? What is the cause so that you can get that taken care of, and reduce your risk of memory loss and overall feel better. And also at night, make sure you're turning off your phone and getting those electronics away from your brain. Studies show how bad all these EMFs, floating through the air are. My husband is culprit of he does some business over across seas, and sometimes he will go to sleep with his cell phone under his pillow.
Oh, no.
So I have to nicely remind him,
Yeah.
do not do that. I'd like to
I
keep
do
you
that
around for a
sometimes.
long time.
I do that sometimes, and I can tell the difference in my sleep and just how deep I sleep when my phone is either near me or away. And what's super crazy about this too is that I've even noticed that there's times that like my phone will be completely silent on do not disturb. And the moment I get a notification, even though it doesn't ring, it doesn't vibrate anything, I'll wake up, which is crazy to think like what could actually be happening there. Like there's been several times I've noticed this. And so, I'm making it a habit too, just for, protection of your brain and everything. Putting it in another room because that is dangerous. We use it enough already throughout the day. So it's like when you're sleeping, why have it even near you?
Yes. Allow yourself that downtime.
Yes. And Nicole, we talked about depression and sleep. Does stress contribute to memory loss or Alzheimer's?
Absolutely. I mean, I think every episode I touch on stress and how you need to recognize it and gain control of it because it is consuming. It will, physically break down your body and mind being one of them. So, I know we all want to be like strong entrepreneurs and sometimes not recognize that we are mentally, physically, or emotionally stressed, but stress is a real thing. It's there and you need to get it under control. And we've talked about, there's so many different things that you can do to help get that stress manageable.
And stress is the culprit also for not only Alzheimer's, memory loss, but so many other diseases. So that's important. I know Dr. Rada also is, very big on just certain emotions that can cause issues in the heart, in the brain. So that'll be interesting too. And I know you'll have him on the show eventually. So I look forward to that too. And Nicole, we talked a lot about the person preventing Alzheimer's or slowing down the progression, right? Are there any tips that you can give to family members that might be dealing with a loved one that has Alzheimer's?
Yeah, that definitely. So there's something called caregiver burnout. This is kind of like a whole nother topic, but it can be very stressful for the family members caring for the individual losing their memory because it's heartbreaking. It's sad. I know some people going through some of these processes and it's like they love their loved ones, but they're also draining themselves trying to care for them. You also have to care for yourselves and you need to figure out how to create, your own lifestyle plan so that you can still, show them your love, take care of them, but also, keep yourself healthy.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's important because I think it's one of the diseases that's it's really sad because it's like almost like they're in the person that has it, right, is in like in a toddler stage and like you just feel like you have to be constantly aware of what they're doing, what they're eating, how are they doing it? Are they wandering off? It's tough. It feels like it's almost 24/7. And so for anyone listening to this show dealing with that, we're so sorry. I'm thankful to, have Dr. Nicole Srednicki on the show to shed some light, certain tips that you can actually implement in your life to prevent these things or to prevent your loved ones from getting it. And also, go to someone who will be able to help you slow down the progression in this disease.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for bringing up that point. I think that is so important. And so for everybody out there, if you want to predispose yourself to memory loss and potentially dementia or Alzheimer's, ignore everything we've just covered. Eat processed foods, live a sedentary lifestyle, but I hope that none of you want that. So if you want to influence your health outcomes and reduce the risks of these horrific diseases, consider implementing what we just spoke about. And I want you to stay tuned. This is actually going to be a 3-part series because this is such an important topic. We still have so much more to cover. We're actually going to have a special guest on our next episode with some profound information that could change your life. And then after that, we're going to get into some of the new cutting edge technologies and also therapies that can help to reduce risks of development or progression. So I hope that at least in this podcast, has been a little bit of anxiety reduction around this scary word, these diseases. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Alex, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning into Ultra Healthy Now. And if today's episode sparked any interest of achieving maximum health potential, reducing these risks, I invite you to visit us at ultrahealthynow.com and explore some of our formulated supplements, ask any questions, suggest a podcast topic, or if you want to schedule a consultation, you can reach us through the website, ultrahealthynow.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at ultrahealthyhuman. And just remember that health, beauty, and happiness start on the inside. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ultra Healthy Now podcast with Dr. Nicole Srednicki. To discover more, visit ultrahealthynow.com and jumpstart your wellness journey with our 21-day detox program, a total body reset, more energy, better focus, and weight reduction. Our carefully formulated, high-quality supplements will aid in a new level of wellness. Don't wait. Unleash the Ultra Healthy Human within you. At Ultra Healthy Human, Eastern and Western modalities are combined with cutting-edge technology to guide personalized health programs to help you tap into the limitless potential of your mind and body. Because true health, beauty, and happiness start from within. Remember to subscribe, like, and share this episode wherever you listen to podcasts.
And before we sign off, I want to make it crystal clear that the information presented here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. This episode should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And while we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, the content discussed in this podcast is based on general knowledge and research available at the time of recording. Medical knowledge and guidelines can evolve, and what we discussed may not always reflect the most current research or recommendations. If you have specific health concerns or questions, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare professional or a medical specialist who can provide personalized advice tailored to your unique circumstances. Every individual's health situation is unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another.
This podcast is a presentation of the Rich Dad Media Network.